Hi, I'm Daniel Andrews, owner and creator of Andrewsfootball.com. This is going to be a great video. I'm going to break down post-draft, just my first glimpse of the NFC South and kind of just my opinion of everything that's going on in that division. Keep in mind, starting in June, I'm going to break down all 32 teams individually into great detail, but this is just a quick snapshot of how I think the NFC South is going to be. First off, let's go worst to first, and we're going to start off with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is a team that went 5-11. Head coach got fired, and I think they did about as good as a job as you can in bringing in the right coach, and that's Bruce Arians. For those of you who don't know, this was the guy who was the head coach in Carolina, retired. But now I'm not going to go through his whole career because it's quite extensive, but he was the offensive coordinator in Pittsburgh for a long time. Coach Ben Roethlisberger went to Arizona, rejuvenated Carson Palmer's career. Now he's in Tampa Bay with Jameis Winston. And look, if you look at these three quarterbacks, they all have very similar type of characteristics. They're all big. They're all strong. They're all big. Well, I mean, keep in mind Roethlisberger and Winston, move around a little bit, but they're not athletic quarterbacks. They're not mobile quarterbacks or running quarterbacks. These are all big, strong, pocket passing type quarterbacks. And that's the thing, though. Out of these three quarterbacks, which quarterback has the most arm talent? That's actually Jameis Winston. That's why I really like this, because look what he did with Carson Palmer. He helped Big Ben en route to go into the Pro Football Hall of Fame when he retires, probably a first ballot Hall of Famer. And now you get a guy who's got even more talent in Jameis Winston, who's got the same type of mold. I mean, you have to understand Palmer and Roethlisberger, 6'5", 230, 240 type quarterbacks with a bazooka arm. That's what Winston is. So you got the perfect quarterback coach. And then the first thing he does, he brings in Todd Bowles, his former defensive coordinator, who got a real bad deal with the Jets. I'm not going to go too much in detail on that, but he didn't have a good situation there to succeed in New York. So bringing him in to coach up the defense in Tampa Bay is brilliant, because you're working on the offense, get the best possible guy on the defense. Well, get a guy that you already know can work wonders on the defensive side of the ball. And he's anxious to get another head coaching job, which he will someday. Todd Bowles is an excellent coach. So on a scale of 1 to 10, as far as your coaching hires, you got a 10. Now, for those of you who don't know the coaching story, is that Dirk Cutter was brought in, former offensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons. He was brought into Tampa Bay when they had Lovie Smith to help groom Jameis Winston. Now, when they went from 2 wins to 6 wins, and Winston looked like he was developing really nicely, Dirk Cutter had an opportunity to be an NFL head coach. Tampa Bay actually fired Lovie Smith and promoted Dirk Cutter from offensive coordinator to head coach. So the only offensive mind he's ever known is Dirk Cutter. So now you bring in a completely different type of personality, but a quarterback guru in Bruce Arians to go ahead and mold Winston. I think that's smart. Then you go ahead and take your draft. First 5 players they drafted, all defense, to help build up your defense, which you're going to need. Look at the division you're in. You're going to need defensive help. So I love what Tampa Bay has done so far. Here's the thing. I'm not sure the result is going to be immediate. This is a team that's on the right direction. Going into 2020 and beyond, great. This year, I'm not so sure. You're switching defensive schemes. You're adding a bunch of new players, especially through the draft. You got Winston, who's got all the talent in the world, but he had some issues. If you watch the Hard Knocks of Tampa Bay a couple of years ago, he looked really immature. This is not a guy you really looked like you were excited to be the leader of your franchise. Mike Evans is probably the best wide receiver in football, and all due respect to a lot of other names out there. Mike Evans should be the best receiver in football. You had some quarterback issues. There's a lot of talent on this team, but for 2019, I wouldn't set the bar very high. Next up is the Carolina Panthers. Now, Carolina and Atlanta both finished 7-9, but I'm going to hit Carolina first. Now, the thing with Carolina is that of all the teams in the NFL, I usually get a good bead on them. Carolina's the exception. I have no clue about the Carolina Panthers. 4 years ago, when they went 15-1. I had them dead last. I had them finishing last in the NFC South. I thought they were going to go in a different direction as far as head coach, maybe even Cam Newton. They go 15-1, go to Super Bowl, of course, lose. Next year, I have them winning a division. They go 6-10. Following that, okay, Ron Rivera is going to go, have them finishing dead last. They go 11-5, make the playoffs. Last year, I wasn't really sure what to think, but they started off 6-2. I had them beating Pittsburgh, and I'm like, man, this could be the best team in the NFC. I mean, they got all these pieces in play. I didn't think it would work. Then they lose 7 straight before winning the last game, which really didn't count. The Saints put in all their backups, basically a preseason game, to finish 7-9. That's why I'm going to do them first, because really, if it was a real game against the Saints, it's a loss. I mean, no disrespect to the Carolina Panthers there, but it's a loss. I mean, it just is. So here's the thing. This team had a great draft. In the Greg Little and Taylor Moton, you got 2 bookend stud tackles. Moton going into his 3rd year is probably going to be on the right side. Greg Little, a guy I was extremely high on going into the draft, will be on the left side. You couldn't ask for a better future. You signed Matt Paradis from Denver, awesome center. So the offensive line, for the first time in a long time, is really a strength to Carolina Panthers. Now, I say that because I think Greg Little's going to be a stud. I think this is going to be a guy who's just going to be a stud, 12-year starter at left tackle, probably go to a couple Pro Bowls. I think this is a home run hire. Now, Norv Turner is your offensive coordinator. And for those of you who don't know, Norv Turner's a brilliant offensive mind. Basically, he's the architect of the 90s Dallas Cowboys offense, a team that, of course, the team of the decade of the 90s. That's what I'm trying to say. But the offense is now very similar to that 90s Cowboys. 2 bookend tackles, so you got a good solid offensive line. Emmitt Smith, when he was a rookie, was about 195 pounds. His rookie year, he had 937 rushing yards. Well, Ed McCaffrey's his dad. Christian McCaffrey, about 205. Very similar to Emmitt Smith coming out of college, believe it or not, at least size-wise. This last year he had 1,098 rushing yards, but he had 107 receptions for 897 yards with 13 total touchdowns. If you've seen pictures of him, he's bulked up in an attempt to get bigger. Same thing Emmitt Smith did. Now, am I saying he's going to be the same player as Emmitt Smith? No. But is there a lot of comparisons? Absolutely, because you have the same offensive coordinator for both players. And you're going to do basically the same thing. The offense that Norv Turner is going to build, you want to check down to the tight end and to the running backs, and then you want to throw long and intermediate to your wide receivers, which are usually bigger, stronger guys, for a lot of dig routes, inside routes, guys that can beat up smaller corners. They don't have the receivers, but if Olsen can come back to form, don't ask him to have, the same type of production he had before he was injured. Keep in mind, he's going to be 34 or 35 start of the season. So I would say 1,000 yards is not a realistic possibility for him. But is this guy a guy on 3rd and 5? Oh, yeah, you want to go to him. So I like that. I like the offense. Brian Burns, if you're switching to a pseudo 3-4, is a perfect 3-4 outside linebacker. So the Carolina Panthers are doing a lot of really good things, but I've never had a good beat on the Panthers. I think it's almost a cop-out when I say they're going to be an average team, but they're going to be an average team. The offense is kind of mismatched because the classic Norv Turner offense has big physical receivers. DJ Moore, he's I think 6 foot 200. He's not the classic 6'2" or 6'3" receiver that they had. Curtis Samuel, more of a running back / receiver. I actually think you should put him in at tailback and spell McCaffrey, but they're not going to do that. They're going to use him as a receiver. They let go of Funchess, of course, Kelvin Benjamin last year. It's really interesting because the switch to 3-4 is not something I saw Ron Rivera doing, but he's on the hot seat. If I was a gambling man, I would tell you that they're really looking to move on after this season. If this season doesn't work out, they go 7-9 again, I think they're going to explode this whole team. If they get into the playoffs, then no reason to stop doing what you're doing. Last year was just a fluke. Cam Newton got hurt, but that's just my opinion. But 7-9, I think Riviera goes. I think Cam Newton goes. You drafted Will Greer in the third round. This is a pure passer. This is a guy that you would step in and say, hey, we're going to go in a different direction. But that's just to me, this is the number one thing I can guarantee about the Carolina Panthers this year. If they play 7-9 ball again, they lose 7 straight again, I think Riviera goes, and I think it's a good possibility Cam Newton also goes. Next up is the Atlanta Falcons, and it's kind of funny, as a few days ago, Scott Pioli, a guy who I know because he was the Chiefs general manager for a couple of years, didn't do a good job. And I thought he had the right idea. It just didn't work out. Basically, he was trying to recreate the same type of success he had in New England, the same type of blueprint, and he was bringing over a lot of players, but it just didn't work out. He thought that he could do the same thing with Matt Castle as the Patriots did with Tom Brady. It really didn't work out that way. Then he chose Todd Haley, a guy that brilliant offensive mind, but was kind of difficult to work with. Todd Haley's a phenomenal coach. Scott Pioli's a phenomenal front office guy, but it didn't work well together. Of course, they were all fired and ushered in Andy Reid and a lot of success, but he's stepping down as the second in command of the Atlanta Falcons organization, which is a little surprising to me, but he wants to move on. I think he wants to be the number one guy, smart football guy. How does that affect him on the field this year? I actually don't think it does, but it is something of note and something to pursue, because this is a guy who was really instrumental in building up this team. The one thing I will say about the Atlanta Falcons is their draft I didn't like. They really traded up to get back into the first round. Their draft a tackle who was public and saying, I thought I was going to go in the second round. When you draft a guy in the first round and he tells you, I didn't think I was going to be drafted in the first round, that's a huge red flag. I didn't like either one of their offensive linemen to go in the first round, even though they were good players. Another thing is that I thought the Atlanta Falcons, they're a team that's 7-9, and you're addressing one major need in the draft when it looked like to me you had several. However, if you remember earlier in the video, I talked about Dirk Cutter. He was the former offensive coordinator of the Atlanta Falcons. He's going back to being the offensive coordinator of the Atlanta Falcons after spending several years in Tampa Bay. So does he know the NFC South? Yes, he does. What's the strength of the Atlanta Falcons? Your offense. Then you put a very good offensive mind as the new offensive coordinator. Ooh, boy. And then the best part is your head coach is a defensive mind. You're not trying to be the 85 Bears here. You're just trying to be good enough to let the offense score 30, 35 points a game. That was the same blueprint that got you in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. Why not follow that blueprint? You have a Hall of Fame quarterback. You have a Hall of Fame wide receiver. Some really good players surrounding you. You apparently are hoping you fix your a weak link in the offense with your offensive line, drafting 2 guys in the first round on the offensive line. I didn't like it, but so your offensive line's fixed. Your defense has just got to be somewhere in the teens, and you're going to the playoffs. That's the thing with the Atlanta Falcons. If your defense is in the teens, you're 100% going to the playoffs because the offense is going to be very good. And last and best is going to be New Orleans Saints. And here's the thing. The Saints have had the best team in football the last 2 years. They 100% should have been into the last 2 Super Bowls. They're the best team in the NFC. First, they lose to Minneapolis Miracle, a play that's made 99 out of 100 times. Then the brutal missed call. But bottom line, they were up 13-0. They really should have been up 21-0. And just they weren't able to establish the running game. I saw a Rams team that won the game and the Saints team that lost. Yeah, it was a bad call, but bottom line, even if you that call goes your first and goal, are you sure you're going to get in? You're having problems running the ball. And then, did you have to throw an interception in overtime? You got the ball first. You got Drew Brees. So, there's a thing called the Super Bowl hangover. Team that loses the Super Bowl usually struggles to get back. yes, I'm fully aware New England Patriots lost 2 years ago and then won last year. I'm fully aware. But usually a team that loses the Super Bowl will kind of slide down. Fully aware Saints didn't go to a Super Bowl, but are they going to be the third best team in the league again? And that, to me, is really, really hard to say because, when I break down teams, I always go a plus-minus scale. Okay, Tampa Bay is going to get a plus. Carolina Panthers, to me, is a neutral, even though I like the draft. I'm switching defenses, trying to fit an offense that it doesn't seem like you have all the right pieces in place. Ultimately, I would say if I had to, I'd give them neutral, but if I had to, I'd say maybe a plus, maybe. And that's if Cam Newton's healthy and he stays healthy 16 games, then definitely a plus. But the Falcons, definitely a plus. With the Saints, it's definitely a neutral. But when I look at all four teams in the division, the team has best defense? It's New Orleans Saints. And it's really rare that you go into a season and say the Saints got the best defense. But the Saints got the best defense. And now remember last year they had Marcus Davenport from the University of Texas San Antonio. This is a project guy. He had some injuries. He was a part-time starter. The name I kept on hearing was DeMarcus Ware. A lot of people felt like he could be a DeMarcus Ware type of player, a double-digit sack guy. The Saints are banking on that. That was the whole reason why they traded this year's first-round pick. And this team is loaded. I just wonder, can they rebound again? I mean, two devastating, unbelievable fluke. They're flukes. Fluke playoff losses. And now you got to sit here and say, hey, let's do it again. I don't know. There's a window that's closing rapidly for the Saints. I just don't know if it's this year or if it's already closed. Do they have another year or two left? Yes, they do. As long as Drew Brees is quarterback in the New Orleans Saints and you have the best defense in the division, you got to be hands-on favorites to win. But this division's loaded, okay? Carolina, if Cam Newton stays healthy, they're a force. The Atlanta Falcons look like they could be something really, really tough to deal with as well. Tampa Bay's work in progress. So I want to tell you that the Saints are going to win the division. That's my gut reaction. However, I'm looking at three teams. This is a tough division, believe it or not. But if the Saints don't suffer from a Super Bowl hangover type of offseason, if they're able to get themselves, if they're able to go into the offseason and say, hey, we're the best team in football, let's play like we're the best team in football. Or are they going to go and say, you know what, we're the best team in football the last 2 years, we couldn't even get to the Super Bowl. It has an effect. I think they have the best team. I think they have the best coaching staff. I think they have the best defense. I think they have the best quarterback. Bottom line. So listen, if you're a subscriber to Andrews Football, you already know you're one of the greatest people on planet Earth. All your wildest dreams are going to come true. But if you're new to my channel, there's this button right down here. Check this out. Look right here. See it right here. Bam! Hit that button. Become one of the greatest people on planet Earth. Wait till next Saturday when I'm going to break down the NFC North. See you next Saturday.